Obviously the industry's been on a long, well, a relatively long journey now to have this success. Is there anything that you think we could learn through that, either from what we could do better for the next stage of development, or that we just need to do a bit more of next time? Emma's looking like, don't ask me that question first, so but I will. Emma.
What can we learn? I mean, I think you can see in the UK, I think there's some interesting things that you've kind of seen roll out. So you've seen a large market around UK waters, and that's stimulated the kind of development of these places that have got, you know, something to offer to them. So I think, you know, I think now, I'm trying to not steal the thunder for tomorrow, but we're like now talking about a lot more opportunity from our indigenous market, with a massive increase in the next decade or so to in gigawatts. But then there's also this global stage as well. And I think probably one of the things is we could learn is to really understand where our innovations sit, where our specialisms sit, and really, so now this export opportunity starts revealing itself as this market goes global. Then what are the products, what are the services, what is the knowledge, etc., that is, you know, something that can be capitalised upon and can be exported, because the spotlight's on this area now, in the north for this. But I think I guess where I'm kind of is having that real strong offer, both in the market in the UK, because it's still growing, it's going to, you know, still a lot of opportunity left in it, but also when we're getting all these delegations coming into the north, coming to see how to do offshore wind, you know, what is the market offer back, so that you can really, you know, really grow and benefit from that global growth.
Yeah, thanks. Tony, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just two things. One around some degree of, I don't wish to reinvent the CEGBs, but some degree of central planning around grid integration is really, really important from a full systems perspective. I think that's a lesson learned. I think Emma's right. I think we need to crystallise our USP around what's exportable. I have a wish that we can get some control of the core technology back to the UK. I know we've got the blade plant at Siemens, but I'd like to see that ambition grow beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, we're part of the North East strategy. The North East LEP strategy was about trying to drive away from what looks like the easiest. It's very convenient to go for some of the simple to do stuff, particularly the towers. I mean, you know, if you've got lots of empty shipyards, which we had back in 2008, 2009, clearly the easy thing would be employ lots of welders and get a lot of jobs and make it look really attractive. And we've tried to avoid that where possible, and that's kind of a really, really difficult challenge, so I take that. I think, you know, one thing that I would like people to think about are the things, we talk a lot about the hardware here, but you know, obviously I came from looking at kind of cables and damage and risk, and of course that manifests itself into the insurance market. So some of the things that were being talked about big data, really, really important to collect that information, to share that information, and then to get an element of that market. I don't think our connectivity, for example, with Lloyds in the City of London is particularly as clean as it could be. Tony knows that tomorrow I'm signing a collaboration agreement with Delaware in the States, who are looking for how their position, amongst other things, fit into this. And I see them as a place that's got most of the major insurers and a huge financial sector, as well as having some ports. And I actually think they're well positioned for getting value out of the US market. But we need to go and take that offer to them and describe what it is they should be looking for. So I think one of the things for me is we need to look beyond just the obvious hardware solutions, because if you just look at that, inevitably you're just trying to deal with some major ports on either the East Coast or, and it's been a fairly East Coast balance to the panel today. The Cumbrian and me would kind of point out that the biggest wind farm for a long time was actually off Walney Island. So you know, but so there's big clusters around, but we tend to look coastal, and there's a lot more to do. Sorry, the microphone's down there.
Yeah, hi, it's Simon Bowens from Friends of the Earth. what's been happening in the offshore wind industry over the last decade has been truly transformative and really positive. I'd like to see, and the programme kind of mentioned the onshore wind sector, and I'd like to see some more inspiration and hope that actually the brakes are going to be coming off from central government on the onshore wind sector, and really kind of trying to identify some of the synergy between the offshore clusters and the onshore and the nascent onshore industry over the next few years, and maybe what kind of looking to you guys to outline any plans you've got around that, and whether you think the brakes are coming off as well.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Ray.
Yeah, I'll start with that one, because we are a provider of onshore wind turbines as well as offshore. My boss is actually in a conference in Scotland this week talking about onshore. There is a move in government. There's a different language coming out of energy ministers. We were with the energy minister recently. We talked about the manifesto promise that the Conservatives made, that there would be no new onshore wind, and he used the expression something like, that's a lifetime ago in politics. So I sense there was a movement towards that. There are a couple of things that are playing into that. Of course, the very low costs we've seen in offshore wind kind of set a benchmark now that onshore wind might struggle to compete with. There's always been an implicit assumption that onshore was cheaper than offshore, but actually we've driven so much cost out of offshore that we're probably pretty close to parity now. So with auction results in the 30-something pounds, there is a prospect that we could get onshore wind projects away for a similar value, which again would be zero cost to bill pays. So it's becoming much more attractive to government. I think there are things that need to change. We need that route to market, and there is still a judicial review, of course, coming before the courts on the auction and the exclusion of onshore. But actually we need some planning changes to allow really modern, much bigger turbines in the onshore environment, and that's likely to be Scottish projects in areas that are forestry and kind of a long way from housing. So I think there is a real shift in the mood in Westminster towards it. I think there was probably a good chance that we would have made some progress if we hadn't entered this current election period. I think they were getting close to saying something. I suspect that now might be on hold until we have a new government. But it's definitely something which we are still doing work on, still see scope for, and would have I think a positive outlook that there will be more onshore projects coming back to the UK.
Yeah, I think just from an MP11 perspective, I think that's a very well-made point. And I think organisations like yours should play a very important part in kind of helping us construct a case for that. And we talk a lot of the benefits of clean green energy, and that's helping, but we've got to recognise that, the onshore wind developments have been, particularly in areas like the north of England, where we've got a lot of national park environment, and we've got a lot of protection around our landscapes, and understandably so, how we can work together to bring forward as much as we can do, because I know onshore developers feel that they get constrained, and of course that risk and challenge, and I think part of that is about trying to work up what the real story is, and I think there's a place for everything. I accept Ray's point that offshore wind's doing really well, but we all know that the challenge of hitting our net zero targets is such that you've got to turn over every stone, and onshore obviously is a big part of it. I think another thing is about how you then capture that energy and what you do with it. I make no apologies for this, it feels to me like we export a lot of power to the south, and there are losses in that kind of power transmission piece, and we need to capture more of that value, I think, for our region, and actually help Scotland to capture more of that value for their region too, because people talk about the generation piece, but then kind of miss the losses and the transmission losses that come with it, quite apart from all of the other significant impacts. So, I think there's a big piece of work, and I would kind of urge you to feel as though you can really strongly contribute, because I think people like Friends of the Earth and other organisations like that have got a big part in helping us frame that in a way that lands well, as opposed to it just coming across as an economic case based around businesses trying to create something. So I think it was a point well made. I'm really sorry. I'm conscious that 2:30 there is a change. There was a change. There is not a break. So I need to kind of draw that to a close. So thanks everybody for listening. As I said earlier today, this is about trying to start a conversation and start a journey. So this is more about informing people about what we have and where we are. And hopefully through that, some connectivity and networking will take place. But the next time around, we'll be able to talk more about what we're doing in collaboration, because there's a great sense and urgency around collaborating well, both across the north, but with our partners outside the north. So just to help you, session 4, if you're in here, will be the hydrogen zone. If you go to Fringe Room 2, you will be in the you'll be in energy and innovation in the North East, apparently. But actually, the one to go to, I think, is in Fringe Zone 1, which is the Westminster Zone, which sounds like a whole heap of fun, doesn't it? So I suspect everyone's running slightly behind, so you've got plenty of time to get to those rooms, or stay in here if you're going to do hydrogen. Thanks everybody for your attention, and thanks again for coming today.